Hi everybody, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame, and Happy New Year. We're back with another year of videos and podcasts for the Candid Frame. And today I want to talk about setting. And I've talked about setting before, about trying to find a setting first and then allowing a subject to move into the frame. But I wanted to expand on that a little bit. Sometimes I think that the setting itself can be the subject matter, and that the person actually can be a sort of a secondary element, a flourish that helps to complete the shot. If you take a look at a lot of the images that people submit to the Flickr Pool, it's people that are the primary focus of many of the photographs. And the setting is often secondary. And sometimes it's not even considered when people are making the photographs. They just see the person, they make the photograph, and whether or not the background or the setting is of particular importance doesn't really come across. And sometimes people get lucky and they make a great shot of a person out in the street. And then other times it's rather lackluster because there's so many distractions in the frame. And so I wanted to sort of reverse that and focus on images that are really strong in terms of how the photographer uses the setting and the space, and then uses the people that they include in the frame to add that little something something to help complete the frame. Okay, here we have a shot by Teresa. This was made with a Olympus EM10 Mark II at 320th of a second, f10, ISO 200. Really like this setting. We have some really great saturated color with the blue, and then we have nice play of light and shadow. We have these shapes that are created by the building itself. We have these wonderful triangles that exist throughout the frame, and you know how much I love triangles. They're the silhouettes of these spires here on the gate. We have the shadow of the pants and the towel here in the frame. We have these vertical and horizontal lines that pervade the entire shot. This is what I'm talking about in terms of setting, right? We have all of these things here: color, line, shape, graphic, light and shadow, all of those things. So immediately my eye would gravitate to a scene like this because of the potential it has for creating a very graphic image. And sometimes you can lose sight of that when you're just thinking about, I want to photograph people, that this is street photography and I always have to include people. And I think that sometimes you have to reconsider the scene and think about it in the reverse. Think about it in terms of, how can I make an interesting shot of the scene whether or not there is a human being in the frame? How can I compose this shot, include all these things that I just mentioned, and try to make a well-balanced, pleasing photograph? And I think Chris here does a remarkable job here with all the elements that he has here, because there's a risk of it being a little busy, but I think everything plays off each other really wonderfully. This triangle here that's created by this area of shade here is mirrored here, because this is the shadow of this, what I assume is sort of a balcony or something, and that is created here. And then all of these triangles are sort of repeated throughout around the frame, and that repetition helps to really anchor the shot. I love the counterpoint of the towel and the pants and the shadow that exists within the frame. I think that this young boy in the frame helps to add that additional flourish, because otherwise the scene would be more of really interesting still life. But having that human element in the shot helps to sort of complete the frame, because it gives a sense of scale to the rest of the shot, but it also serves as a nice counterpoint, especially because of that splash of yellow that is part of his jacket. If there's anything I would have liked, would have been photographing him in this area right here, because I would have liked this boy to sort of fill in this negative space that exists here, and also to have some clearance between the shadow of the pant here and the back of his head. I don't like the fact that it's juxtaposed directly there, but that's a small thing, but it's an important thing to consider whenever you find a scene and you're composing for the scene first, even before someone has walked into the frame. Because what you can do, especially if people are moving through the scene, is figure out exactly where you want someone to be in order to complete the shot. Because if you find this shot, you can stand there and photograph for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long you need to photograph, in order to sort of figure out your timing and to figure out exactly when you need to depress that shutter release button so that the subject is going to be right where you want them. It's a small thing, but for me, it's always really critical for a successful shot. Here we have a shot by Aaldering. This was made with a Leica Q at 1/25th of a second, f8, ISO 800. Now this looks like it was maybe made in a hotel or a museum. I'm not sure exactly where. But I like the simplicity and the subtlety of the overall scene. We have this hallway, and this area in the foreground is relegated to darkness. Yet we're getting some light from what seems to be another hallway that has a window that's casting this light against this wall here. You can see the fall off of the light further down the hallway, which is mirrored by the fall off here. We have some light here around the rim, and I'm not sure if that light is coming from a source on this other side of the wall and that this is sort of a gap. I'm not reading that light source is coming anywhere within this space. So it looks like this is more of a partition of some sort, and there's some illumination running down the length of the floor here. The graphics sense of the shot is really strong here because you got these great lines that are helping to guide us towards the center of the frame. It's sort of using sort of a vanishing point perspective in order to control how the viewer experiences the shot. The light coming here through the window is absolutely critical. I like that the photographer here included that little sliver of window light there to help just create a sense of depth, and also just to sort of break the tones that sort of skew towards the darker tones. Having that bright element there is really a nice little accent for the overall composition. So imagine again this shot without any people in it. I think that the overall framing, the use of the light and shadow, the lines, especially the lines on the floor that help again lead us towards the center of the frame, play off of each other really nicely. At the end you have what looks to be a painting hanging on a wall. So even if the human figure wasn't there, we were being guided towards the end of the frame, there would be something for our eyes to settle on at the end of the hallway, which is a nice touch. But again, look what happens with the human figure included in the shot. All of a sudden, again, we have a sense of scale. There's a sense of mystery to it because not only do we have this shadow, this silhouette of this figure here, but we have his shadow mirrored in this wall, and there's a ghostly feel and look to it that I really enjoy. And you can see that without the person there, this would be an interesting shot, but it would be more of a graphic shot in terms of line and shape, but also it would be exploring tonality in terms of shadow and light and the gradations between those two. But having that human figure in there really helps to elevate the shot and make it that much more interesting. And this is a scene that that most photographers would never consider making a photograph in because it isn't necessarily very dramatic. But I'm assuming that Harry was drawn to the quality of the light, which is something I'm always on the hunt for. And you'll be surprised where you can find interesting light. It's not only happening at dusk and dawn outdoors. Sometimes it's happening indoors or in that transition between the indoors and the outdoors. And it's important to keep an eye out for it, because scenes like this can suddenly be revealed to you. And if you have the foresight like Harry did to have his camera at the ready, you can make a really interesting and beautiful shot. Okay, here we have a shot by Adam Turner. This was shot with a Context RTS, so this is a film shot. So here's a shot that's made at night, and the heart of the image revolves around the use of a slow shutter speed to catch the streaking of the cars as they move through this corner. It seems like some of these cars are making a turn, some are traveling in front of the camera from left to right, some are going diagonally across the street. You have the lamp lights, you have the signal lights, red, the yellow, the green of the signal lights all appearing in the frame, and then you have large areas of shadow. We have the lines of the curb itself as well as the lines of the crosswalk and the lanes that are marked on the street. So you have all of those things within that shot, right? And then we have the human figure here in the frame. And look at how small that human figure is. And we see a lot of shots like this made at night where people use slow shutter speeds in order to get that streaking of light. And it's a common motif, and I love doing it myself when I find a really interesting scene. But you can see here how having that human figure adds something to the frame, because otherwise it would just be about the light, the color, the texture of the street. Interesting shot, but somehow having that guy leaning against that light post makes it really interesting visually for me. And I like the fact that it's not a person just simply walking through the scene. Just the fact that this person is leaning against that light post for what I know is a relatively long exposure. It's kind of interesting. It's like, well, what's he doing there? He's obviously waiting for something, and it doesn't look like he's waiting to simply cross the street. Seems like there's something going on, and it spurs me to start reading into the image and trying to think about, well, what's happening here? Not just where is it, but what's the story here in the middle of the night? And it just has a moody feel to it, which I really, really like. And just see how that having that small figure there, which takes up just a small percentage of the frame, helps to complete the shot. It's really nice. All right, I hope you found that helpful, as well as continuing to produce great content for you in terms of the podcast and with respect to the interviews that I do with photographers. I'm going to be adding some more content to the blog in the form of written content. I'm going to be doing these articles every Wednesday where I talk about different aspects of photography and my own personal process. I just recently released an article on ISO and sharpness, in which I talk about the importance of ISO with respect to the shutter speed that you use that can ensure you get a sharp photograph. I'll be producing this content every Wednesday. By the time you see this video, I will likely at least have 2 more articles on the site that you can check out. And you can also enjoy all the interviews that we normally do as well. And the most recent interview that I did was with photographer Lauren Wells, who is a commercial editorial photographer based out in New York. She's also a street photographer who's worked on a variety of personal projects. The interesting part of her story is that she started her professional life as a lawyer, as a practicing attorney. And at some point, she just wasn't satisfied with that. And, she took on the challenge of changing her life and her career to become a professional photographer. It's a real interesting and inspiring story, and you should check it out. And if you want to listen to the show, you can go to thecandidframe.com, or you can download the Candid Frame app. If you go to the site at thecandidframe.com, you'll see links here for both the Android and the iOS version of the app. It's completely free, and it gives you access to over 400 interviews that I've conducted over the last 11, going on 12 years. And if you really love photography, you definitely want to check it out. And if you like these videos, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.